I guess it's time to get this off my chest. My name is Mike, and I've been married to Sarah for 7 years. We were the couple that everyone looked up to, perfect on the outside but struggling under the surface. At least I thought we were a solid team. Lately, though, things have felt off. There were signs, subtle shifts in her demeanor, her phone always face down, late nights at the office, and a growing distance between us. For the longest time, I brushed it off as the usual stress of adulthood, work, bills, kids, but deep down I felt something was wrong. A few weeks ago, while I was cleaning out our bedroom closet, I stumbled upon a small notebook hidden in the corner. It belonged to Sarah and was filled with notes that made my stomach drop. They were all about her therapy sessions, but they were different. She had written about her feelings for another man, detailing moments of intimacy that felt like getting punched in the gut. As I read those words, I felt my heart racing, panic setting in. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, the woman I loved, was unfaithful. The day I confronted her is seared into my memory. I came home from work unexpectedly, hoping to surprise her with dinner. Instead, I found her pacing the living room with her phone glued to her hand. The moment she saw me, her face turned pale and the guilt was palpable. My heart was racing and I knew I had to confront her. I held up the notebook. Just seeing the horror on her face felt like vindication. "Sarah, what is this?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "What are you talking about, Mike? It's nothing. Nothing, you're talking about someone else, you're cheating on me." Her reaction was nothing short of infuriating. Instead of admitting to what she had done, she started spinning this elaborate tale about how it was all part of her therapy. "I needed to explore my feelings, Mike. It's about my trauma. You wouldn't understand," she yelled, her voice escalating. I stood there, feeling like the ground had been pulled from under me. It was surreal. How could she try to wrap this train wreck in the guise of self-exploration? I never thought I'd hear her defend her infidelity as a part of therapy, but there she was, trying to convince me that all of this wasn't a betrayal, but rather an act of healing. In that moment, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness. I wanted to scream, to make her understand how deeply she had hurt me, but I also felt a strange, cold detachment, as if I was watching this unfold from the outside. The rest of the evening was a whirlwind of accusations and tears. I was raging inside, but Sarah's manipulation twisted the knife deeper. "I just needed to feel something different," she said, her tone dripping with a mix of defiance and remorse that felt insincere. As we argued, I could feel my heart breaking into pieces. I loved this woman. I had built my life around her. I felt lost, like I was drowning with no life raft in sight. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the realization that the person I thought I knew had been living a double life. After our confrontation devolved into silence, I retreated to the bedroom, the weight of the world on my shoulders. I couldn't sleep that night. Every moment replayed in my mind like a cruel film loop, her words echoing in the dark. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore, it was about me. The betrayal had shaken my entire identity. I spent that night wrestling with my emotions and trying to make sense of it all. How could I even begin to trust her again? What was the next step? As dawn broke, I knew I had decisions to make, and they wouldn't be easy. The days that followed our confrontation were a blur of confusion, anger, and a strange sense of loneliness. Sarah seemed to float in and out of my reality, her attempts at normalcy falling flat. Every time she smiled at me, I felt the weight of her betrayal press down harder. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living with a stranger. The intimacy we once shared felt tainted, polluted by her lies. I took time off work, needing to think clearly. I walked around our neighborhood, trying to process everything. I saw couples laughing and holding hands, and it filled me with rage and resentment. How could they be so happy while I felt like my whole world was crumbling? I started to feel angry not just at Sarah, but at myself for being so blind to her betrayal. The notes I had discovered haunted me. How could she justify her actions? One night, after a long day of debating whether to confront her again or just walk away, I decided to do something drastic. I went back to the bedroom and poured myself a drink. I couldn't remember the last time I had taken a moment to just breathe. As I stared at the glass, I felt my phone buzz on the table. It was a text from Sarah. "Can we talk? I want to explain everything." I felt a surge of anger but also a flicker of curiosity. Did she really think she could explain her way out of this? I texted back, "Fine, but no excuses, just the truth." We agreed to meet in the living room. When she walked in, I could see the desperation in her eyes. It was almost heartbreaking, but I couldn't afford to feel pity for her. I needed clarity. I needed her to be honest. "Mike, please, I want you to know that I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she began, her voice shaky. "I thought I was doing the right thing for my mental health. My therapist said exploring my feelings was important." I cut her off. "Exploring your feelings? You went and had sex with someone else, Sarah. How is that exploring feelings?" She looked wounded, like I had slapped her across the face. I know I messed up, but it was confusing. I thought it would help me understand what I wanted, what I needed. I thought it was part of my recovery." I shook my head in disbelief. "You're saying cheating on me was part of your therapy?" "Yes, it's not like I didn't love you, I still do. But during therapy I realized I had never fully addressed my past traumas and I thought—" Her voice trailed off and I could see her struggling to find the right words. The more she talked, the more infuriated I became. I was caught between disbelief and frustration. "So what's next? You want me to just accept that you wanted to explore your feelings with someone else? Do you really believe that's an acceptable excuse?" "No, I didn't think it through. I was in a dark place and I didn't want to hurt you. I thought this would be a way to heal." I stood there, contemplating whether I could ever find it in myself to forgive her. The anger swirling within me was suffocating, but there was also a lingering sadness. The woman I had loved and trusted had shattered everything we built together. "Sarah, I don't know if I can keep doing this," I finally said, my voice trembling. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know how to move on from this." She started crying, and for a brief moment I felt a flicker of compassion for her, but I quickly pushed it aside. She had put me through hell. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my tone softer now. "I want to fight for us. I want to go to couples therapy. I want to make this right." The desperation in her voice was evident, but as I looked into her eyes, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of betrayal. Could I really trust her again? I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind racing. I could feel the anger boiling over one moment, while the next, sadness washed over me like a wave. The conflict inside me was unbearable. I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage, but now I was left questioning everything. Finally, as dawn crept in, I made my decision. I would give her one chance to prove she was committed to making things right. But I needed to know the depth of her lies, and I would be on the lookout for any signs of deception. It was time to take control, not just of my emotions but of my future. I realized I had to stand firm, set boundaries, and determine if reconciliation was even possible after such a betrayal. The next days felt like walking on a tightrope. We agreed to try couples therapy, but I couldn't shake off the betrayal that hung in the air. Each session felt like a battlefield where my feelings were both raw and exposed. Sarah appeared genuinely remorseful, but I was skeptical. I didn't want to fall for her tears and sweet words again. I needed action, not just promises. Our therapist, Dr. Miller, was a middle-aged woman with an air of calm about her. She listened thoughtfully as we both shared our perspectives. I spoke about my feelings of betrayal, the loss of trust, and the anger that threatened to consume me. Sarah, on the other hand, was quick to play the victim card, explaining how her trauma had pushed her into a dark place where she sought validation outside our marriage. As the sessions progressed, I noticed Sarah becoming more open about her feelings, which was a step forward. Yet there was an underlying tension that I couldn't ignore. I found myself obsessively checking her phone when she wasn't around. I hated that I was becoming the paranoid husband, but I couldn't help it. The thought of her cheating again made my skin crawl. One evening, while Sarah was in the shower, I grabbed her phone off the counter. My heart raced, and I could feel the adrenaline pumping. I knew this was wrong, but I needed to know if she was still hiding things. I scrolled through her messages, feeling like a thief in her life. Then I saw it, a conversation with a guy named Jason. My stomach dropped. They had been texting frequently and the messages were flirtatious. "Can't stop thinking about you," one read. I felt the heat rise in my chest as anger surged through me. What the hell was she thinking? When she stepped out of the shower, I confronted her, holding the phone like a weapon. "Who is Jason?" I demanded, the words spilling out like venom. Her eyes widened in shock, and I could see the panic flood her face. "Oh my God, Mike, it's not what you think. Not what I think. This is another guy, Sarah. You said you wanted to make things right. Why are you texting him?" "I swear I was just trying to make friends. I didn't mean for it to come out like this," she pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. "Friends. Friends don't text, can't stop thinking about you." The confrontation escalated, and I could feel my emotions boiling over. I was done with her excuses. "You need to end this right now. If you ever cared about us, you'll cut him off. I won't live in this shadow of doubt." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will. I promise I'll tell him it's over." But I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. It was as if she was making promises she didn't believe herself. That night I couldn't sleep. The betrayal felt like a festering wound that wouldn't heal. I was filled with an overwhelming sense of loss, not just for our marriage but for the trust that had been so easily shattered. I replayed our history in my mind, moments of laughter and connection now tainted by doubt. I started isolating myself from friends, not wanting to share my pain. I felt like I was betraying Sarah by talking about our problems, even though she was the one who had betrayed me. The emotional toll was exhausting, and I began to wonder if staying together was an illusion of happiness rather than a reality. One evening, after another therapy session, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. As I strolled through the park, I felt a sense of freedom that I hadn't experienced in weeks. I watched families playing, couples holding hands, and for the first time I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could reclaim my happiness, whether with Sarah or on my own. When I returned home, I found Sarah sitting on the couch, visibly anxious. "Mike, can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. I nodded, bracing myself for whatever was coming. "I've been thinking a lot. I know I messed up and I want to make things right. You deserve better than what I've given you." Her words struck a chord in me. Part of me wanted to believe her, but the other part screamed for self-preservation. "Sarah, you say that, but how am I supposed to trust you again? You keep pushing me away with your actions. I've cut off Jason, I promise. I'm committed to you, but I need you to give me a chance to prove it." "I want to believe you, but it's hard," I admitted, the vulnerability spilling out. "I'll do whatever it takes," she insisted, desperation lacing her voice. As I looked into her eyes, I saw a flicker of the woman I had fallen in love with. But was it enough? I was still hurt, still scared of the potential for more betrayal. Yet I knew I had to decide whether I could bear the burden of rebuilding our relationship or if it was time to walk away for good. The path ahead was foggy, filled with uncertainty, but the clarity I sought was essential. I had to be honest with myself and with her about what I truly wanted. The ball was now in my court, and I had to choose wisely. As the days turned into weeks, the weight of our situation settled deeper into my bones. Therapy sessions became a staple of our routine, but each time I sat across from Sarah, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into an abyss. I wanted to believe her promises, I truly did. But the tether of trust had been severed, and it felt like I was constantly teetering on a precipice, unsure of whether to jump or pull back. In therapy, we discussed our feelings, our fears, and the future. Sarah seemed earnest, crying genuine tears, expressing how remorseful she was for her choices. Dr. Miller encouraged her to share more about her past experiences that led her to seek validation outside our marriage. It was tough for Sarah to open up about her childhood trauma. But slowly she began to peel back the layers. I listened intently, trying to empathize, but all I could feel was the sharp sting of betrayal. "Mike, I know I hurt you and I'm so sorry," she said during one session. "But I'm trying to fix this. I want to be better for you, for us." Every time she said those words, my heart waged war with my mind. I wanted to see the woman I loved, the woman I married, but I also felt like I was holding a damaged piece of glass, cutting myself every time I reached for it. One evening, after an especially emotional therapy session, I came home feeling drained. Sarah was in the kitchen making dinner, but the tension was palpable. I could sense she wanted to talk, to connect, but I wasn't ready. I needed space to process everything. "Mike," she asked hesitantly, "do you think we'll ever get back to where we were?" I sighed, running my hands through my hair. I don't know, Sarah. I want to believe we can, but it's hard. Every time I look at you, I remember what you did. Her face fell, and I felt a pang of guilt. I hated being the reason for her pain, but I also knew I had to be honest. It's just so complicated. I'm scared, Sarah. I'm scared of being hurt again. I understand, she said softly. But I'm here. I'm committed to making things right. I want to build a new foundation. Building a new foundation is one thing, but I can't just forget what happened, I replied, my voice steady but filled with exhaustion. Later that night, I found myself scrolling through social media, trying to escape my reality. I stumbled upon posts from friends, couples celebrating anniversaries and milestones. It felt like a cruel reminder of everything I was missing. I put my phone down and decided to take a walk to clear my mind. As I roamed the neighborhood, I found myself contemplating my own worth. Was I worth rebuilding this relationship? Did I still want Sarah in my life, or should I consider moving on? The next evening, I decided to reach out to a close friend, Jason, who had always been a sounding board for me. I shared everything, my feelings of betrayal, the therapy, and Sarah's attempts to make amends. As I spoke, I could hear the concern in his voice. Mike, you deserve to be happy. You need to think about what's best for you, he said. It's great that she's trying, but you can't lose yourself in the process. You've got to look out for your own well-being. His words resonated with me. I felt torn between wanting to give Sarah a chance and wanting to protect my heart. After hanging up, I spent hours thinking about my next steps. I realized I had to set boundaries, not just for Sarah but for myself. A few days later, I felt compelled to have another conversation with Sarah. I needed to lay everything on the table. Sarah, I need to be clear about where I stand, I began, my heart racing. I'm willing to work on this, but there are rules we need to establish. She looked at me, her eyes wide with curiosity, perhaps fear. What do you mean? I need you to understand that trust has to be rebuilt. That means no more texting other guys, no more secrets. I want transparency. I explained, my tone firm but not unkind. I can do that, I promise, she replied, her voice a mixture of desperation and hope. I also think we need to set boundaries for our emotional connection. I can't keep doing this if we're not both fully committed, I added, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders as I spoke. Mike, I'm committed, I swear, I'll do anything. Her fervor was convincing, but I held my ground. Let's take it one day at a time. I want to see real change, not just words. As the days turned into weeks, I noticed a shift in Sarah's behavior. She became more attentive, more present. She stopped texting late at night and our conversations became more meaningful. I wanted to feel hopeful, but the past loomed like a shadow, always present. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder and sighed. I'm really trying, Mike. I hope you can see that. I responded honestly. I can see the effort, but it's going to take time for me to really trust you again. Time is what we have, right? She said, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. I nodded, knowing that rebuilding would require patience, but I also felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could find our way back to each other. Yet, I knew I had to remain vigilant, because the road to reconciliation is often fraught with challenges, and I was determined not to be blindsided again. I had to protect my heart while learning to navigate this new landscape of love and trust. As the months went by, we continued attending therapy sessions, and I started to feel a tentative shift in our relationship. There were still echoes of doubt, but Sarah was working hard to restore the trust we had lost. She was more open about her feelings, taking responsibility for her actions, and I could see a change in her demeanor. It felt like she was genuinely trying to be a better partner. Yet despite the progress, there were days when the weight of what had happened came crashing back down on me. One evening, after a particularly difficult therapy session, I came home feeling emotionally drained. Sarah was waiting for me, a home-cooked meal spread out on the dining table, candles flickering softly. In the dim light, she looked radiant, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Wow, this looks amazing, I said, trying to muster a smile. I wanted to do something special, she replied, her eyes sparkling with hope. I thought we could have a date night, just the two of us. As we sat down to eat, I could see her attempting to create an atmosphere of normalcy, but my mind was racing. I kept thinking about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the lies. I struggled to connect with the woman in front of me. "So how was your day?" she asked, trying to spark conversation. I forced myself to focus on her words, but my thoughts kept drifting. "It was fine," I replied, the conversation feeling forced. "Just fine," she pressed. "I thought we could talk about our future, maybe some of the things we want to do together." That was when the floodgates opened. "I don't even know if I can think about the future, Sarah," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm still stuck in the past. Every time I look at you, I remember what you did. And it hurts." Tears welled up in her eyes and she reached across the table, grabbing my hand. "I know I messed up. I'm trying to work through it and I want to move forward with you, but I need you to meet me halfway." "I want to, but it's hard," I admitted. "I need to feel secure in this relationship again. I can't keep living with the ghost of your infidelity lurking around." "I'm not asking you to forget," she said, her voice pleading. "I'm asking you to trust me again. I promise I won't hurt you like that again." That night, as I lay in bed, I felt an intense internal struggle. I was torn between the love I still had for her and the fear that I was building on a foundation of shattered trust. I realized that while therapy seemed to be helping, I still had so much work to do, both individually and as a couple. The following week, we had another therapy session. Dr. Miller suggested we explore the idea of rebuilding intimacy. Trust is built through small, consistent actions. Intimacy can be reestablished through shared experiences and open communication, she explained. It was a daunting task. How could I rebuild intimacy with someone who had caused me so much pain? But I was willing to try. After the session, Sarah suggested we take a weekend trip together, a chance to reconnect away from the pressures of daily life. I hesitated but ultimately agreed, hoping that a change of scenery might help us both. The weekend arrived, and we headed to a cozy cabin in the woods. The beauty of nature surrounded us, and for the first time in a long time I felt a sense of peace. We spent our days hiking, cooking together, and laughing over board games at night. It felt like we were starting to find our rhythm again, even if it was slow. One evening, as we sat by the fire, I could see the woman I fell in love with peeking through the cracks of the person she had been. We talked openly about our fears, our hopes, and everything in between. It felt like a real breakthrough. "Mike, I want to ask you something," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Do you think we can ever truly get back to where we were? Can we rebuild this?" I took a deep breath, weighing my words carefully. "I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things were, but I believe we can build something new, something stronger." "That's all I want," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "I just want a chance to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve." That night, we shared a moment that felt intimate and genuine. We kissed, and while it wasn't the same as it had once been, it felt like a step in the right direction. But even as I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of hope, I was reminded that rebuilding trust was a marathon, not a sprint. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, and I had to remain vigilant. I learned that healing doesn't happen overnight, and some scars take longer to fade. As we returned home, I felt a renewed commitment to make things work, but I also knew I had to protect my heart. I had to keep setting boundaries, communicating openly, and allowing for the possibility of disappointment. It was going to require patience, hard work, and a willingness to confront the past while daring to dream of a future together. I knew the journey was just beginning, but I was committed to navigating it together. The weeks turned into months, and while the journey of rebuilding our relationship continued, it was far from linear. There were moments of clarity and joy, but also times when old wounds felt fresh. I learned to celebrate the small victories, recognizing that healing from betrayal is a process, not an event. Each day was an opportunity for growth, both for Sarah and for me. One of the most significant changes I noticed in Sarah was her willingness to hold herself accountable. She began attending therapy regularly on her own, and I could see the growth in her understanding of her past traumas. In our conversations, she started to connect her childhood experiences with her previous behavior. It was as if she was finally learning to confront the demons that had pushed her into that dark place of infidelity. "Mike, I know I made mistakes, but I'm learning from them," she said one evening as we sat on the porch, watching the sun set. "I want to be better, not just for you, but for myself too." I appreciated her efforts. It showed me that she was committed to her own healing, which was crucial for our relationship. Trust was still a fragile construct between us, but I could see the foundation slowly being rebuilt. We were learning how to communicate better, express our needs, and support each other in ways we hadn't before. Despite the progress, there were still moments of doubt that crept in. Occasionally, I would find myself questioning her actions, wondering if she was being truthful or if old habits would resurface. I had to remind myself that it was a part of the healing process, and I needed to work on my own insecurities as much as she was working on hers. One day, during a particularly challenging moment, we hit a rough patch. Sarah had a late meeting at work, and I found myself spiraling, my mind racing with fears of her slipping back into old habits. When she finally came home, I confronted her about my worries. "You were late. It's hard for me not to think the worst, Sarah." "I'm not going to hurt you again," she replied, frustration creeping into her voice. "I can't keep proving myself every time you doubt me." I felt the tension rise, and I knew I had to take a step back. "I understand you're working hard to regain my trust, but I need to be honest about my feelings. This is difficult for me." We took a moment to breathe, and I reminded myself that communication was key. I acknowledged my insecurities while also recognizing her progress. We agreed to establish a system of check-ins, where we would openly discuss our feelings about the relationship, so I wouldn't feel the need to spiral into doubt. From that point on, I made a conscious effort to be more open and honest with her about my feelings and fears. I learned to express my vulnerabilities without placing blame. It was a balancing act. I was still healing, and I needed to acknowledge my own emotions while also supporting her. As we moved into the summer, I could feel a palpable shift in our relationship. We started to plan trips together and even began discussing the future with a sense of excitement rather than dread. It was as if we were finally learning to be vulnerable again, but this time with a deeper understanding of each other. One evening, as we sat under the stars, I turned to Sarah. "I can finally see a future for us again. It feels different, but I think it can be beautiful." Her eyes sparkled with hope. "I want that too, Mike. I want to build a life together that reflects who we are now, not who we used to be." With every shared moment, I felt the threads of trust weaving back together, stronger than before. I also realized that love isn't just about the absence of pain. It's about the willingness to confront it, learn from it, and grow together. In the months that followed, we continued to build our relationship on mutual respect, honesty, and love. The journey wasn't without its bumps, but we learned to navigate them together. I discovered that true healing requires patience, vulnerability, and an open heart. Looking back, I can see that the betrayal, while painful, forced us to reevaluate what we wanted from our marriage. It became a catalyst for change and growth. I learned that love can survive even the darkest of storms, but it requires effort and commitment from both partners. As I reflect on our journey, I realize that while the road was rocky, it led us to a deeper understanding of each other. We're still a work in progress, but I feel a sense of hope that we can continue to build something beautiful together. Love is messy, complicated, and sometimes heartbreaking, but it's also resilient. For anyone facing a similar struggle, remember that healing takes time. Trust can be rebuilt, but it requires honesty, communication, and a commitment to growth. You can emerge from the shadows of betrayal, and while it might take time, it's possible to find your way back to a love that feels even stronger than before.